Good day everyone, this is the Messis, and today it's time to talk about my hands-on experience with the REAPER specialization from last week's Heart of Thorns beta event. I never really did a video dedicated to the REAPER before. But first I want to share with you guys a few general impressions of the upcoming expansion.
Oh, gods. So much wreckage.
I was expecting carnage, but this... Mordremoth actually took down the entire fleet.
Spirits. Could anyone have survived? We need to get down there, fast!
We only had access to a small portion of the Verdant Brink, which is one of the maps that will be added in Heart of Thorns. And I heard some rumors from data miners that we may get 4 or more new maps in the expansion, but don't quote me on that. Still, this initial encounter with the upcoming content left me quite satisfied, to be honest. Guild Wars 2 always had high graphic quality, and now it seems they have caught up with the art style as well, because just high graphic quality is never enough. Barely 50 minutes in and I already started to notice the insane amount of work that went into developing this place. The level of detail is impressive, especially when you consider just how condensed the entire region is. And I could honestly say that there were a few locations that literally rivaled single-player games in terms of graphics. It was an absolute pleasure to walk in such beautiful surroundings, and the icing on the cake was, if you were following me for a while, you will know that I have always complained in the past that Guild Wars 2 doesn't have an epic background story, epic dialogue, epic monster encounters, and an epic atmosphere. The type of atmosphere that gives me a genuine RPG feeling. You know, when the soundtrack and the graphics and the art style, everything meshes together perfectly, and even though all you do is walk, you still have that sense of epicness.
Another easy tug!
See what I mean? I was really missing something like this. And mind you, it's not an easy thing to do. So I'm really pleased to see that Guild Wars 2 finally managed to achieve it, even if it's just in a few locations so far. I'm also quite fond of the new NPCs. They are basically some highly detailed frogs. Frog. Frog. It's good to see they managed to get a good balance of both humor and seriousness with these NPCs. Because in my opinion, a lot of the characters in Guild Wars 2 until now just seemed cheesy, shallow, out of place and borderline annoying. Serious. Is that even a word? Gliding. Gliding feels very natural and smooth, doesn't seem to be gimmicky at all, it activates instantly and it's easy to maneuver, doesn't clip with the terrain, and the landing is also quite nice. Overall, it's a really good addition to the gaming experience, although you could still work on the stiffness of the character while in midair, and I think it needs a small bar somewhere to show the current state of your gliding resource, so you don't get into unpleasant situations too often. I also like the fact that there seems to be very few safe spots in the area. You guys might not think about this right away, but the fact that if you leave your character unattended for a bit could result in you getting ganked, kind of makes it difficult for botters to have high effectiveness. As for the monsters, they are significantly more interactive. That's actually the first thing you will notice. Combat finally poses a bit of a challenge. They have a variety of new skills and abilities that seem to be focused around countering certain playstyles rather than the generic normal damage. We have mobs that do a lot of AoE damage, then explode, so they are a bit more difficult to handle in melee. Sniper type mobs which do high damage at a very long range, I'm guessing it's a response to ranged glass cannon type builds. The new monsters also seem to like to CC you a lot, which encourages the use of anti-CC mechanics. Combined with the revamped Defiance mechanic, basically now almost all monsters can potentially be CC'd if you manage to break through this Defiance type shield that always regenerates, which means you have to coordinate your CCs with your fellow players. This may very well be the most dynamic open world combat system I have ever seen. The kind that would require the amount of control a Chronomancer Mesmer would bring to the table. The kind that would require the new kiting capabilities which Guardian now possesses with Dragon Hunter specialization. Guild Wars 2 always had one of the best, if not the best, build system out there. But like I have said many times in the past, its combat system simply wasn't challenging and complex enough to require, or at least facilitate, the usage of the entire spectrum of diversity that the build system has to offer. I had a hunch a few months ago when I said the game seems to be preparing for a change, and I am very pleased with what I have seen so far. So, on to the Reaper. I couldn't be more happy with how the Reaper turned out. Well, I could, but that's besides the point. I believe the Reaper is exactly what the Necromancer was missing. Some of you might remember that I have said many times in the past that the Necromancer should never be transformed into a second Elementalist or second Warrior or Guardian, whatever. We don't have to get party-wide buffs. We need to match that effectiveness as an equivalent, not an equal, not in the same way. And we do that with debuffing, AoE debuffing in this case. And this is exactly what happened. Besides, buffing is overrated, and everything that the majority of players believe to be true about DPS is not. And I will show you guys soon enough exactly what I'm talking about. I've been working on a very special video for almost a month now, so haha, soon. Anyway, I made a small schematic just to give you guys a clear perspective on the Necromancer class. In terms of damage, you have the glass cannon, which is very fragile, has the highest single target melee and range bursting, highest AoE ranged non-frequent bursting, and short-term debuffing capabilities. The hybrid is also fragile, has medium single target range DPS, medium AoE range sustain, and medium non-frequent range AoE bursting, and long-term debuffing capabilities. The Condition Mancer is very tanking, especially when you take into consideration life siphoning effects, has low to medium single target range DPS, which is also highly situational, and has the highest AoE range sustain DPS, also long-term debuffing. Okay? Now, in the most basic and obvious Reaper build, because of the traits Decimate, theoretically achieve 100% critical strike chance while in Death Shroud without investing a single point into precision. That means you can invest more into defense without sacrificing your damage. That is, of course, if you can add a considerable amount of vulnerability on monsters, which shouldn't be too hard with spells like Death Spiral and Well of Suffering, and Nothing Can Save You, which is meant to heavily punish Guardian type mobs. And we already have such monsters in the game already, the Dredge, and I'm assuming even more are on their way. Plus traits like Rendering Shroud and Unyielding Blast, you should have absolutely no problem maintaining 25 stacks of vulnerability on multiple opponents. Add in the unprecedented AoE boon removal from Well of Power and Nothing Can Save You, plus Shield to the Bone, and we have ourselves a very strong AoE debuffer. So, in the beta, I went with the Cavalier armor. Keep in mind I didn't have an Ascended set prepared, so I went with the standard exotics instead, therefore the final numbers are significantly higher. but I still managed to get around 3100 armor flat. On top of that, the new heal, Your Soul is Mine, adds a nice finishing touch to your Life Force generation since it does scale the more targets you hit. So when used in combination with other Life Force generation spells like Spectral Armor or Spectral Lock, you can significantly increase your survivability if required. Okay, on to the damage. All of our wells are also combo field dark, and now with the addition of the Greatsword skill Nightfall, we have access to potentially 4 combo fields dark at the same time, which can generate quite a bit of extra damage and sustain with Reaper Shroud's Soul Spiral and also the spammable Gravedigger. In addition to that, keeping in tune with the Necromancer class, we also have good self-buffing as well from You Are All Weakness. Only this time it was designed to function in AoE bursting scenarios. So basically you instantly get 20 stacks of might while you put weakness on your opponents, put Well of Suffering down and go into Reaper Shroud number 4, and you can single-handedly take out an entire pack of mobs. And if that wasn't enough, you can just spam Gravedigger until you put all the remaining monsters into the ground. So this pretty much takes care of the AoE bursting part of the build. But the build also has AoE sustain damage, and it's power type damage, which unlike condition type damage doesn't require a ramp up time. The Necromancer community in the past was always asking for cleave. Cleave, 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 cleave. And ArenaNet listened. See? Cleaves foes in front of you. Damage wise, it's almost as high as the good old Life Blast, since it has double the attack speed. So I'm not sure, but the Necromancer may very well have the strongest cleave in the game when Reaper comes out. Not sure. But it's definitely the strongest at this level of survivability. Now, despite the fact that you are already tanky besides the weakness, you notice you also have stability from You Are All Weakness, stability from Infusing Terror, and even more stability plus AoE stun and high AoE damage from Chill to the Bone. So as you can see, the Reaper specialization was designed to function within a new and improved, more dynamic PvE system, with monsters that buff themselves and CC you, zerg you, and snipe you. So a lot of the complaints that I'm seeing so far about the Necromancer are kind of misplaced. In addition to what I said in the beginning about not transforming the Necromancer into another class, since there is no balance between an Elementalist and another Elementalist, I'm surprised of just how many people were expecting ArenaNet to buff the Necromancer to have higher effectiveness in the old meta. Not to mention that the old meta is toxic and is not at all what people think, and you guys will see soon enough what I'm talking about. No, it's a new PvE system, and we have to approach differently in the build system as well. So when we draw the line, we have a very tanky melee fighter with massive AoE bursting potential, as well as high AoE sustained DPS, and massive AoE debuffing capabilities. So as you can see, they managed to not only complement the class with what it was missing, while giving the community what they were asking for, but they also did it in such a way that it's unique to Guild Wars 2 and to MMOs in general for that matter, and it respects the Necromancer's overall dark theme. It is perfect. Almost. So whoever made this, I thank you. Now, I want to point out a few issues with the Reaper specialization. The first problem is, and I noticed this at a few other specializations as well, they are more or less standalone. And what I mean by that, they do not synergize well enough with the other weapon sets to be worth switching and being stuck there for 10 seconds. The best synergy I found for the Reaper's Greatsword while doing a power build was Axe Warhorn for the Retaliation, Locust Swarm, and the Cone-Shaped Daze if required. And that's about it. And on that note, I would recommend, if I may, to increase the duration scaling factor of Unholy Fist to further strengthen the synergy between the two weapon sets. The Greatsword auto attack. Considering its attack speed, it does about the same damage as the new Reaper Shroud auto attack, but it applies less buffs and debuffs, which makes the Greatsword auto attack useless, and that's a big problem. What made Guild Wars 2 build system one of the best in the world was the fact that everything was useful for something. So I don't believe we should increase its damage, even though I know a lot of players might disagree with that, because the Reaper does possess lower single target DPS than the traditional glass cannon. But what you guys need to understand is that it has to have a weakness as well. It's already much more tanky and has a lot more AoE DPS, and we are not trying to create the ultimate class and the ultimate build, because then everyone will play that and the game will be called Necromancer Wars 2, the return of the Nemesis. So it has to have a downside as well. But who's to say we can make that so-called downside useful for something? The 1 second chill at the end of the Greatsword auto attack chain is literally useless, both in PvE and PvP. So why not replace that with a 1 second daze? I don't believe it will imbalance PvP, considering just how slow the Greatsword attacks, but in PvE it will serve a dual purpose: DPS and sustain damage to the Defiance shield. Yes? No? Maybe? Reaper's Grasp. It's a really fun ability on paper, but I don't think it's useful enough in a real scenario. It doesn't matter if you could tank, if monsters just disengage as soon as you bring them in. So I would recommend giving it a wider angle on the cone, kind of like what these mobs have. Make it slower cast, so it's dodgeable, and give it a 1 second taunt. That way in PvP players can just disengage after that 1 second if they choose to, and in PvE it ensures that monsters don't instantly disengage. The Shout Rise. It's useless in its current form. So my suggestion here would be to give the ability a second phase. Tap it once to summon the Jagged Horrors, tap it again, and the Jagged Horrors lock onto your target and begin charging towards it, only to self-destruct upon reaching their destination. Now here's the catch. Their detonation damage and initial movement speed starts off really small, but dramatically increases based on the distance traveled, and they should be able to go over 1500 range. This would be the Reaper's only long range attack, sort of like a ballistic type attack, easily counterable in PvP, but very fun and useful in a dynamic PvE environment. So yeah, fixed it. Okay, the spell Gravedigger. It's a wonderful concept which almost single-handedly promotes an executioner type playstyle. But I believe the 80% faster recharge rate when it hits a target under 50% health is not exactly optimal, since you will always have this weird small pause before you can use it again, and there isn't anything that you could fill that pause with. Maybe half an auto attack. So I think the recharge should be 90 to 100%, and the health threshold should be around 25% to match that of the executioner scythe. So you can either spam monsters into the ground in AoE, or do a nice finishing combo for single target without getting into situations where people just spam one skill non-stop on the boss as soon as he reaches 50% health. That's no good. Also perhaps increase the damage value on both of these abilities by another 15 to 20%. Just a thought. Last but definitely not least, as you can see, I played around with the condition type Reaper as well, and I must say it's a very interesting playstyle. You get to play as a condition mancer with a smaller maximum sustain potential, but with almost no ramp up time. So just the fact that a single trade path can already branch out into two such distinctive playstyles which complement what we previously had so perfectly it's insane. But I must say that I don't think the durations are quite right when it comes to chilling with the Reaper specialization. They are far too short to be consistent. I know it looks good on paper to have a condition master which relies on burning, and on top of that you put chill and fear to boost it up, but the problem is the chill fades too quickly, and you can't really increase its damage to compensate, because then you would have something that resembles fear. So I really hope that the developers will consider giving the Reaper the ability to sustain his chilling factor for a much longer period of time, in PvE at least. So this is basically everything I had to say about the Reaper specialization. If you guys have any questions or thoughts you want to share on the subject or on my suggestions, feel free to write them in the comment section below. Next up, I will do a smaller video on the Revenant class, and then I will resume my current projects that I had going before the beta interrupted me. I'm really looking forward to see the feedback on my upcoming special video. And trust me guys, it will be worth the wait. And after that, I have 3 more builds finished footage and gear wise. I just have to find the time to write the script for them. But until next time, enjoy your gaming and have a great day.